So, you want to change the world. Build something that makes people go, problem is, you'll be flying blind. You build product on one end, results come out the other, but in between is a massive black hole. That's why we built Amplitude. It gives you a whole new understanding of customer behavior, predicts outcomes, and adapts experiences to drive world-changing results. You want to change the world? Now you can.
Thanks for tuning in to the Product-Led Festival. We really hope you're enjoying the festival so far, because we've got even more insights heading your way. All sessions are designed to be interactive and give you the chance to engage with our speakers, so come ready to get involved with your questions and comments. For all things product-led growth, don't forget to check out the Product-Led Alliance memberships at productledalliance.com. Sit back and enjoy the next session.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Product-Led Festival. I'm really pleased to introduce our next session for the day, which will be a panel discussing building the best product strategy. And we've got Steph Royley, who is our moderator for today. So over to you, Steph.
Hi, good morning. And the rest of the panelists, you're welcome to turn your camera on. I work as the head of product at a fintech startup by the name of Pay It Off. And we have a wonderful panel for you this morning. And what I would like to do is turn it over to each of them to let you know their company, their title, where they're located, a little bit about themselves. So Florian, you're in my upper left. Do you want to start?
Yes, hi everybody. I'm Florian Bonnet. I'm a Senior Director of Customer Lifecycle Management at Typeform. I'm based in Berlin, but as you noticed already, I'm French overall and been doing like product work for the past 6-7 years overall. And before that, worked in different topics, including a gig in strategy consulting.
Great. Ritika?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's Ritika this side. I'm currently based in UK. I have approximately 5 years of experience shipping products across a variety of industries, such as advertising, C2C, and most recently, I'm focusing on search. I started my career in consulting firm, then transitioned to product management. Currently, I'm working as a senior product manager at Yelp, where I'm trying to help users find the best restaurant for themselves and helping them in that decision. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. And then Mohit?
Hey everyone, I'm Mohit. I'm Senior Product Manager at Depop. It's a fashion marketplace, for Gen Z audience. I am based out of London, and my previous experience includes stints in marketplaces like Amazon, Make My Trip, in India and UK. So looking forward to discussion with some of you tonight.
Great. And Alexandra, is your camera just off? We do have another panelist.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. There you are. Okay. I had Caitlin up there. Hi.
Oh, perfect.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Monks. I'm a senior product manager at Wayfair, and I lead the employee experience product group there. I'm based in Chicago, and before I moved into product, I have a background in consulting, growth strategy, and e-commerce, and I'm really excited for the panel today.
Great. And since this is a panel on product strategy, I figured we'd start at the top. My first question for you all is, what do you believe constitutes good product strategy, and what elements do you consider critical for its success? Mohit, would you mind kicking us off?
Sure. Thanks, Steph. Really great question. I think, and it's a perfect start to this session on how to build the best product strategy. I'll be borrowing some of the excerpts from a book I read on strategy called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. So I think. So for me, in a simplest form, I think there are 3 components to a good strategy. The first one is you should know about the problem. So in book, it's mentioned as diagnosis. In my own narrative, it means that we should know about the problem and we should know why it's a problem. So not just stating it as a problem. Which gives you a bit of self-awareness around, okay, this is where we are today. and we could be better, but these are the reasons why we are not better. The second important component is around let's say guiding principles, or how you want to move forward on this. I think that it helps you a lot having those principles, because let's say at a later stage when you're building strategy or taking decisions, or you have to make trade-offs, it's always good to have these principles to fall back upon. Yeah, and these also keep you in a check that you're not swaying away too much from the problem. And the third and most important step, I think, I can't make it any
Sorry, could you say that again?
Sorry, that was my watch.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
We can hear you. Ignore her.
Awesome. Sorry about that. The third and the most important point, I believe, is set of actions, and not only actions, but how those actions roll up into one another. So let's say, even at a C level, when CEOs or let's say CPOs are working around a product strategy or organization strategy, they have to make this coherent set of actions to give to their next set of reports, so that all the actions are working in one direction. Let's say you want to grow from point A to point B. Now, how different pillars within that organization can support that goal? So just to reiterate, I think you should know about where the problem is. In simpler term, you can call it as a diagnosis. The second point is you should have certain set of guiding principles or values which keeps you on the right track when you build that strategy. And the third is set of coherent actions, which define how you're going to solve that problem, or how you're going to overcome that let's say obstacle which you identified in step one. So for me, if you have these three things, and there could be multiple frameworks around this, but I think these three things probably is how I see a good strategy.
Great, thank you. Who would like to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I thought Mohit brought up some really, really good points, and I like the three main ones that you covered off. And I think something that I think about a lot with my team around developing a really strong strategy is actually going a little bit upstream first, and really thinking about like the product vision, because I think that's so critical, because it describes kind of the future we're trying to create, inspires both our product team, our stakeholders, or business partners, investors, customers, whoever it may be, to actually want us to help us make that vision a reality. And then once we've actually crafted that vision and we've set the direction, then our product strategy is actually what like helps us get there. And it's focused on, what are the sequence of products or releases that we have to deliver on that journey to making that vision a reality. And I think developing that really strong product vision comes even more essential, in big organizations like Wayfair, where there's a ton of product teams, because that inspiring product vision helps empower all those different product teams to create strong product strategies autonomously for those specific business units that are business problem areas that they're really focusing on. At Wayfair, ours is, we exist to be the destination for all things home, helping everyone anywhere create their feeling of home. That really strong product vision allows every product team to figure out how does our product strategy align with that. And the last thing I'll say about, I think, focusing on building a strong product strategy is don't try to please everyone at once, or in a single release, because most likely that will lead you to pleasing no one. So focusing your product strategy on one user persona or target market at a time helps you really align and deliver on your organization's business strategy faster and probably more impactfully.
Just to chip in, I think the second point that Mohit raised and what Alexandra just said really resonated with me. I think product strategy is something that binds all these stakeholders together, be it product, be it marketing, be it legal or any other stakeholders that we have. So having like a very clear product strategy helps in rallying people around it and ensuring that the work that all the different product teams are doing in the organization adds up to one product strategy at the end of the day. So how does that all add up into one coherent strategy or one coherent objective that everybody is working towards? I think that is where product strategy really helps. I think wherever I've seen that we have a very clear product strategy, it helps a lot in alignment, reducing the time to market, and ensuring that we are able to we're able to ship products in the right frame of time. And so I think that is one thing that I really think a clear product strategy helps. It really supercharges your efforts in achieving that objective that the firm has outlined for the certain time period.
Maybe because we talked about upstream and maybe lateral, downstream overall is never to forget that whatever strategy you build, you need to ensure that you can execute on it. And many people have good strategies, they just fail on execution. Do you have the right team, like people, either within your product teams or like from your engineering teams, or even like cross-functionally other people that you need to execute on your strategy? I think it's something that is very crucial. Do you have the right like reporting in place, dashboards to be able to monitor your progress? And in terms of alignment, like if you depend on other stakeholders to like also do actions for you to be able to execute, do you have that in place? Can you identify the customers you want to target? So like all these things that seems actually details actually are the ones that will make overall. So that's very important, like execution, like how you are going to execute your game plan, right? So if you like, I like a sport analogy, like who are your players and who do you need to recruit or change position in your team?
Yeah, on that point, Florian, can you say a little bit more? If you have someone who isn't on board with your strategy, what kind of techniques have you used in the past to try and build more alignment?
Yeah, so I think, within your team, usually you manage to get alignment. I think like more cross-functionally, right? When you look at the rest of the company, how do you align overall? Like Mohit said, right? It all starts from like the global company strategy. I think the principal point is always like, first, like always bridging the gap and always talk to people all the time to understand like what people are working on, what are their thoughts, and understand how together you build up to the company strategy. That's very important. And this is something that people tend to think it's like at the higher up, but it happens. Actually, it happens at every level, right? That's where for me, the best functioning product team is really cross-functional, where like the stakeholders you work with are like really within your team. They sometimes participate to your stand-up. So like really talking on a daily basis to constantly align about like what's our vision, what's our understanding about our customers, the problems, the solutions, so that we can anticipate when there is departure for like in the future roadmaps or like understanding of the strategy, but actually we catch them very, very early and we correct early on. Of course, sometimes you join new project, new teams, new companies, and so like the misalignment is very early on and you didn't have the time to build the relationship. I will still always go back to how does like the project of other people like impact the company strategy, and how my projects impact the company the company strategy, and how our strategies like diverge, where they are diverging, and understanding is this an acceptable misalignment, right? Sometimes you have to diverge to be able to converge later on, or is there like incompatibilities? Then in which sense it always go back to sizing opportunities, what can be build the most impact, where we have the most certainty or uncertainty overall, and make a choice together, and if not possible, escalate down the line. But I think if you size properly your initiatives and like which impact you're going to deliver for the company, at some point, like the reason should win, that like whatever brings the most value for the company should be prioritized. I know sometimes it's not always the case.
Great. Anyone else want to add anything around your experiences building consensus with a difficult stakeholder, or just being out of alignment in terms of what the vision is?
I think two things which have helped me so far, in driving this with, let's say, stakeholders, or let's say with a wider group of audience. You really need to start from company mission and vision. So let's say what goals we are setting for, let's say 2022, or maybe Q3 or Q4, and then you work backwards that how my team can support, let's say, these goals, because as a product manager, you'll have tons of things in your backlog, and not only that those things, that list keeps on growing with customer feedback, with all those data points you're looking into, or maybe let's say some other team walks up to you and says, oh, you know what, we should do this as well, it will really help my team. But then going back to the point of guiding principles, I think in this scenario, your mission statement, or whatever goal you have set for yourself for that year comes really handy. And you can just say, okay, this is the company goal, this is how I can support this goal, Now, let's prioritize based on these guiding principles. So I think I've used this in the past and worked pretty well. There may be, certain disagreements or maybe certain conflicts, but then, it's always a healthy discussion to resolve those, or, maybe, some new information comes to light and you say, okay, my initial thinking on this was not entirely correct. So I'm ready to pivot my strategy around those lines.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think one thing that's really worked for me is to get early feedback and early alignment. I try to have like a regular cadence of meeting with certain stakeholders that I think are very important and know about the area and can get good feedback. So I try to have that cadence with those people just to check, this is what I'm working on, this is the strategy, what is your take, and get that feedback and alignment early on. That really works. Again, there can be different kinds of alignment as well. One is more like different stakeholder alignment, right? I think in such cases, it's important to understand where they're coming from, what their objectives are, and how you can align your objectives with them. At times, it can be completely opposite. At times, there is a common ground that you can achieve with those objectives. The second is just an example is, let's say you're completely thinking of a different user problem, which is not something that everybody is aligned to. So in such cases, I think the good way is to do some kind of sizing, which can be multiple, like having like a frugal A/B experiment or doing some user studies, just to validate the user problem that you want to address and how do you want to go about it. I think if there is some kind of validation that you can add to the problem statement, then definitely I've seen people being more open to experimentation and more open to investing resources into that kind of an area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the last thing that I'll add here on this topic is I think as product managers and product leaders, it's our responsibility to be continuously evangelizing our product strategy. And I think that's especially important when you have that resistance in certain pockets of the organization. Because I think by communicating that product strategy and what some of the other presenters have talked about of kind of like what problem we're trying to solve here, we can then align with those partner teams around what are the outcomes from a business perspective we're hoping to achieve. Because then together we can actually identify what are those opportunities, how do we prioritize and think about those, and then actually deliver on those outcomes. And I think if we do this well as PMs, we build really strong trust and partnership with those other teams because we're able to deliver those strong outcomes and do so repeatedly. And I think it's that in which demonstrates kind of that clear pattern of our product delivery or our product strategy delivering value that really helps also kind of remove those roadblocks in the future as well. So I think that evangelization piece is really important.
Great. And we had a question come in from the audience that I think ties really well into alignment. So I'm just going to read it really quickly. But we were asked, what kind of methodologies do each of you use to align vision and strategy and tactics from the CEO to developers? Like, do you have any sort of framework like GEM or GLE models? If you guys want to just do kind of like a short answer on that one. Alexandra, do you want to just start and we'll run around the panel?
Sure, absolutely. So something that we use a lot at Wayfair to kind of align on vision and metrics, and then how does that translate, or strategy, and how does that translate into metrics, is actually using an objective and key results called the OKR framework to ensure that product teams are actually focused on driving outcomes versus output. The objectives are kind of qualitative in nature. They describe kind of the customer or business goal we're looking to achieve. And then from a key result perspective, those are quantitative in nature. So how do we capture, if we know we've achieved it, how do we measure those business results? And so our leadership team creates organizational OKRs that then cascade down through each and every one of the teams. And then each product team then actually creates their own set of OKRs that roll up and show that clear alignment as to how the desired outcomes of our product strategy is actually helping Wayfair achieve their broader objectives. And so leveraging this OKR framework actually allows us to take a more proactive and responsive approach to actually changing customer expectations or business dynamics, since it allows us to continue to stay obsessed with the problem and not the solution. So how this actually tactically plays out from a framework perspective on our product strategy is we review our OKRs on a quarterly basis. We make sure that we're still focused on the right objectives. We communicate that with our development teams. we target 2 to 3 objectives at a time with about 2 to 4 key results per objective. And then we score those on a 0 to 1 scale to actually measure progress against each key result as we move forward. And we've discovered that by allowing our product teams and our development teams to fall in love with the problem that they're looking to solve and not the solution, we can actually empower them to drive more business impact and provide them kind of flexibility in terms of how that outcome is achieved. Because I think it's one of those things, at the end of the day, we can release all the features we want, but if we doesn't solve the actual underlying business problem, we haven't really solved anything, right?
Got it. How about the rest of you? Do any of you use like a formal framework in terms of aligning strategy?
I mean, I answered on the chat, but maybe I can phrase like, OKR is a good framework. I think it really depends on the company that you work on, because you have to fit with others. That's very, very important. I think the main component is like whatever document it is, could be just a simple Google Sheet, is really breaking it down one layer to the next, right? It's always like making sure that like you take the objectives or like the strategy that is like sitting on your leader level, and then like take it for yourself and understand how you can support that, and then feedback, right? Sometimes like when you see some things that maybe like the layer on top does not see, and challenge to make sure that we can deliver the best for the company overall. So like I would not try to stick too much to pre-existing framework if it like doesn't fit naturally, but try to make the best of what you can do with your team. It also depends on the size of the company. OKRs is good, but sometimes when you are too small, it's maybe like too processed overall. But to follow up on also another question, this is like, how do you make sure that then like the strategy is not too prescriptive for people to work on? I think keep in mind like the strategy is not so much the details of what you do, but it could be some goals that you want to achieve, right? So for example, like penetrate a new market overall, which does not tell you how you do it. Like it gives you opportunities, or it could be some means to an end, like, I don't know, personalize the onboarding, right? And still like you have a lot of flexibility on how you want to do that down the line. And as you go in your planning and go more like a quarterly, monthly, weekly, then of course it's more prescriptive, but still there you have a lot of rooms to how you develop even like a feature overall. So like a good strategy, like indeed leave the room for people to make choices. And if it's not the case, I would say it's not really a strategy.
Yeah, I think I agree with Rohit. I think there are multiple strategies also can be of different kinds. I have seen some firms which have a strategy at a goal level that we need to increase, let's say, plus 10% in onboarding. That can be a strategy. It leaves a lot of room on how you want to go about increasing that plus 10% that we're talking about. And the other kind of strategy is that you define the user segment, you say what value you want to deliver and stuff, and basically just explaining the problem a little more. And then you try and understand what are the different mechanisms of, how you want to deliver that value. Let's say it's about ensuring that users find the app useful at a weekly level. So in that case, how do you drive that weekly usage? Can be multiple ways. You can basically increase the use cases or increase the frequency of the existing use cases. So it depends on how prescriptive the product strategy is, and based on that, whether you directly go to OKR or you basically try to figure out what are the themes that you want to talk about. We focus a lot on themes or the user problems basically that we want to target to basically deliver on that product strategy.
I think something to add on this from my side is it depends on the scale as well. So scale and speed at which you want to move. I think Florian touched upon it briefly when he said sometimes these exercises slow you down in the process, and how much tolerance you have with that pace also comes into picture. I've seen these things happening at really fast pace where you have really granular goals and OKRs at team level, and those kind of feed bottoms up into company strategy. And then there are large companies like Amazon where they think 3 years in advance, and then they'll create a strategy for 3 years. So, and they will not disturb it like every year. So every year and they will not disturb their, let's say, goals or OKRs or let's say any plans in those time slices. So every year they'll make a step forward for next 3 years, and they can afford to invest this kind of time because they have that flexibility. So I think the scale and the pace and tolerance on that pace also matters. A startup which has, let's say, 20 employees, they want each and every employee to work at efficient pace. So they may not want to invest so much into OKRs, and they want people to execute more and more every day. There's an interesting case study if someone wants to go back and check around MyFitnessPal. It was an app created by two brothers, and it got acquired by Under Armour, and how suddenly they grew from 20 people to 300 people team, and the kind of difficulties they face while creating an OKR framework for 300 people, and how they overcame that. Very interesting read.
I think just one last point on this. I think product, like you mentioned, the scale of the firm, but also the product maturity matters a lot. At which stage you are, have you achieved product market fit or not? Amazon obviously knows what the next 3 years will look like. Probably a startup does not know that yet. They're still testing their way through it. So you need to be more nimble with your strategy, and also how you set out to deliver that strategy.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and turn the topic just a little bit. I'd be interested in hearing for each of your organizations, how do you use customer input? Whether it's to inform your product strategy, to refine as you're going along, just how it's like factored into your process. And who would like to start on that one? Mohit, do you mind kicking us off in terms of customer feedback and input?
Sure. I think, okay, I may have touched upon this, a couple of minutes back. Again, when you start feeding this bottoms up into organization strategy, and we spoke about, ever evolving backlog as well. So where is this backlog coming from? That backlog is actually coming from, multiple data points, including customer feedback. So I think, and customer feedback becomes very strong driving point when you are, trying to align this with stakeholders. Hey, I'm building for the users. Users are saying this, and this is the most important thing to listen to. I think the art of product management is to peel the layers on that customer feedback and bring out interesting insights. So, for example, let's say I think it's the recent debate around edit button on Twitter, right? So every customer will say, hey, I want edit button on Twitter. But how does it help product manager who is listening to this feedback and saying, but why do you need edit button for? Like, if I introduce edit button, maybe, a number of tweets happening every day might start going down, or people may not start, writing in threads, which other users are consuming content in the form of. So I think peeling those layers down from customer feedback is equally important. You can't, listening, of course, it's important to customer feedback, but you can't take it on the face value. You need to go a level or two deeper and then understand, okay, what actually they want. There's a famous saying by Henry Ford that if I would have asked people, they would just said, we want faster horses, right? So I think that would be my viewpoint on this.
Yeah, maybe I like to jump in. I think customer feedback means many things. I think when you build your strategy, as like we said in this panel, is identifying what are the problems you want to solve. So that could already be like introducing the customer feedback, in understanding in which sequence you're going to fix things or develop products that answer like some jobs to be done overall, and down to execution. Of course, as you refine what product you want to develop and ship to these customers, you will get and seek customer feedback to develop something that actually like help them overall. So it's really at every stage, right, that you should introduce customer feedback. I think you can develop also like programs, like, I mean, at Typeform, we develop a voice of the customer program, but really like try to measure holistically like how customers perceive the experience through the different stage of their journey and the usage of the program. That gives you a bit more holistic framework that every product team and every stakeholder can like leverage at any point in time to infer their strategy, and gives a common framework for people also to align a bit better as to what they want to solve overall. So that again depends on the stage of your company and also the maturity you have in capturing customer feedback, but can be also talking to customer, but so sometimes just measuring things in how people interact with your product overall. So in that sense, like, yeah, every actions you take in the sense as a root in a customer feedback, I think is just really understanding on like when do you need it and what form does it take and how do you aggregate everything together to build this holistic picture.
Yeah, I love what you said about that, Florian, in terms of also like where are you in the product development lifecycle, where are you at as a company as well. You know, one thing that we're really focused on right now is continuous discovery. How do we continue to stay on top of customer input? Because we think it's so important, because most of the time, in the words of Marty Kagan, right, our initial approach to solving the problem normally isn't the right one, right? We need to connect with end users to really understand what they're looking for, what is their behavior, so we can continue to refine that approach in order to continue to delight them. And so, we've leveraged things like web analytics or cloud monitoring software to kind of continually provide that data and insights in terms of how users are behaving on our platform and kind of what is the health of those applications to help inform that product strategy. And then we pair on top of that kind of the quantitative analytics with continuous discovery and research to understand kind of what do users want, what's kind of the context behind the behavior on the platform. And one thing, we had actually Teresa Torres come in and talk at Wayfair recently about continuous discovery. And so my product ops and research team are currently very focused on how do we refine our continuous discovery strategy to more heavily focus on like user interviews or rapid prototyping or assumption testing. We're looking at how do we conduct, at least X number of customer interviews a week, or how do we embed micro surveys in our products to get more rapid feedback that we can, test assumptions with, et cetera. So I think it's exciting to see kind of how you factor in that customer input as you move through the product lifecycle and maturation as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. There could be multiple kinds of customer feedback. One can be, simple NPS, which does not tell us a lot as to why a particular customer voted or gave a particular response. The other could be a descriptive survey, which is open-ended. You can actually learn a lot about customer feedback or what problems they're facing. I think it's a very rich source of information if done correctly. Just one caveat with customer feedback is that it's very solution driven. So as a PM, I think the first thing that you need to do is to ensure that you don't look at the solution, but try and understand why they are asking for that solution. What is the exact user need there? And then probably start thinking solution wise. Generally, all the customer feedback that I've seen, be it usability testing as well, they're just focusing on, you should build this or you should build this feature. That's generally the request that you'll hear all the time. Which is not the right way to go about it. So customers are not good at articulating in general. As a PM, it's our responsibility to actually go down there and understand why they're asking for that particular feature or what the request is.
Great. I am curious, Alexander touched on this. Do any of you currently use like focus groups, a beta tester pool that you do like soft launches with, or actually have a rapid prototyping testing methodology? Or is it more you're moving towards that type of customer feedback?
Yeah, I can elaborate on what I said a little bit earlier. So we partner really close with our design and user research team as we're developing either it's brand new product or new features to actually do usability testing with specific end users. Because Rakita brought up an amazing point. A lot of times they're very solution oriented. So actually walking them through a usability test, we can more clearly hear and they can more clearly articulate what problems they're running into. And we're like, like what we thought they were going to behave like, they're actually not doing that. And they're getting tripped up on this totally other area over here. And that allows us to kind of more quickly prototype and test out, our assumptions and kind of hear back, where they really making sense from a product perspective, or where are they getting tripped up, and how do we continue to focus on that specific area? So we partner really closely with our design partners in terms of, as we usability test throughout the.
Got it. Okay, great. I know that was kind of more of a tactical question, and related to that, once you have what you feel is a really solid product strategy, how do you then take that and kind of deconstruct it or use that to frame your product roadmap? I'm curious about how each of you do that. Rika, would you like to kick us off on that one?
I think that's the most difficult part. Like I think Florian mentioned earlier, the devil is in the details. How do you take that strategy and actually convert it into a tangible, tactical roadmap is where I think I struggle the most in my first PM job. But I think basically how I generally go about it is I try to break down the strategy into, themes around what are the main user problems that I want to target to achieve that strategy. And actually identifying those user problems is the most difficult part of the entire roadmap. For example, you want to increase retention on the app. What are those 10 user problems that you think, or the 10 hypotheses that you have will improve the retention? That's where I think if you identify the right user problems, half of the problem is solved. So for example, there are multiple themes that you can identify which will improve your retention. One method that has really worked for me on identifying the right themes, the right user problems, is that just to experiment your way through it, either through usability, either through UXRs or through some small A/B experiments to understand what kind of impact will that particular user problem give, and will that actually impact your eventual product strategy or the product goal that you've set out for your product. Some themes will stick around and some will fail. So it's basically a cycle that's when you decide that, okay, I'll invest in these 5 themes that really work for us, or 5 user problems that really work for us, and 5 that didn't. So that's how I go about it. And generally the way I think about product roadmap is, in the near term, the product roadmap obviously needs to be, I would say, slightly more concrete, but as you go out in the future, it needs to be more flexible. The reason being, you really need to incorporate all the learnings that you get from these near-term experiments into your roadmap. And hence your roadmap is always evolving. Your strategy might not evolve that much, but as and when you learn from these experiments and all the products that you release, you need to incorporate those learnings as a part of your roadmap. So instead of saying that, focusing on the solution that we build out this feature and this will improve our retention by 10%, instead we should say that, okay, we'll focus on these 4 user problems, and then we'll see which solution deserves more attention, which solution really works for us and which does not work for us. That also gives us time to actually discover the solution more. There could be 10 more ways of going about solving the user problem. There's not always one solution, like I was mentioning. So roadmaps are more flexible. Strategy, as I would say, slightly decided. Yes, we want to work on retention, but how do you go about increasing retention is, I would say, multiple ways to go about it. So focus on the user problem first, try to break down the strategy into user problem and focus on that. And try to test your way through it is the best approach that has always worked for me.
Does anyone want to add anything to that?
Maybe I can continue the thought. I think it's a very good point where we roadmaps need to be flexible. I think especially when you begin, you have so many uncertainties, right? It's sometimes just you go with what you have the most confidence on, which could be just a hunch from past experience, and then you start with that while you build your confidence and build a longer term roadmap overall. I think something also to keep in mind when you build a roadmap is what are the true objectives that you have. Like at some point you have KPIs that you need to meet, right? I think it's ludicrous to think that it does not exist. And when you build your roadmap, make sure that also the items you have on your roadmap, from the sizing that you do in terms of opportunities and confidence you have in them, but they build up to these KPIs, because some are more like moonshots in terms of initiatives. And of course, you might not guarantee that you will reach your business objectives, which in the end, you will still be evaluated upon at some point. And that's how you contribute to the company goals. So make sure that you also keep that in mind. And make sure that if there are some customer problems that yet are important, do not contribute to the overall company like objectives, and especially will not guarantee that you meet company goals, whether it is revenue, profit, like penetration of the market, or even like customer satisfaction, which is a very important KPI. Then maybe it's something that you want to postpone or dedicate less of your resources to, and maybe focus on things where you have more confidence they can deliver value faster sometimes. Again, depends on which teams you are as well, right? If you shoot for like the further horizon of development of product, or if you are like on the team that works on the existing product that brings like today like the core value for the company, it also like change the way you build your roadmaps, of course.
Yeah, to build off of what Florian and Ritika said earlier, which I think are really great points, and focusing the roadmap on those user problems, because a lot of times as we get into our solution discovery on our roadmap, we realize that how we thought we were going to solve the problem might be not the right way, and so it's something that we're constantly thinking about as we're developing our roadmap and focusing them on the user personas, is also making sure as we go along that in our solution discovery is vetting those really 4 important risks in terms of like, is there value in this user problem of what we're doing? Is it viable for our business? Technically, can we actually make it happen? And from a usability perspective, can people actually figure out how to use the feature? And that, to what Ritika said earlier, why aligning kind of your roadmap around those user problems are really important, because that gives your team flexibility and fluidity to alter how you realize that outcome or that desired place you want to be based on those risks as you go through and assess those and you work through the development as well.
Great. And then a question that's been top of mind with me is, I know at our company, we had to adjust our product strategy significantly in terms of the pandemic. And I know several of you are involved with like supply chain. Could each of you, if you're interested in it, and to the extent that you feel comfortable sharing it, talk about how you kind of had to go back to the drawing board with product strategy in the last few years? And whoever would like to jump in on this one's welcome to.
Yeah, maybe I can start. So yeah, I was before Typeform, I was working in a company in travel, and of course, when COVID hit, it was very tough. Like the activity almost stopping for quite some time overall. And I think for us, it is like you can continue with your roadmap if you believe like what you are developing is important. But like as always, when you are in a I would say the normal period, you try to seize opportunities for now, right? And you push aside some like tech debt or like long-term investment, or maybe you like extend them because you want to actually like leverage revenue from your existing customer base and try to do the best to serve more of their needs overall and develop like the future. And I think for us, it has been like, well, we don't really have customer to serve at the moment, so maybe we can take this opportunity to actually make more like structural changes and accelerate on them, because actually we are not, like it's always the cost of delay, right? You are not going to lose any revenue by just focusing on structural changes while there is a crisis overall. That was because we were in trouble. My previous company was HelloFresh, where I guess for them was the reverse. It was just like, well, we need to actually leverage as much as we can the pandemic because we get more and more customers. And so probably like you want to focus on making sure everything scales. You do not want to develop so many new features, but just make sure that everything can scale with the orders, right? So I think it really depends on which side you are on pandemics. But you like, if you don't revisit your strategy while you have like massive events like that, there's probably something wrong in the way you execute, and there's something more that you can do to just harness more of these opportunities.
Yeah, just to add on to what Florian was mentioning, I think it depends what impact it drives for your business as well, because certain domains got hit really hard during pandemic, and certain domains actually got a bit on advantage. So for example, grocery delivery services, some of the startups really mushroomed and grew like crazy during these times, right? Whereas let's say accommodation businesses almost came to halt. So there's a contrast in how the impact is. Some companies must have doubled down on their efforts and hired a lot of people let's say, to move up the timeline on their execution of their strategies. And some companies must have gone back to drawing board and rethink about the segments which they want to target in this situation. What are priorities of those segments, and how they can solve those problems for those segments. One example which comes to my mind is Airbnb. They quickly pivoted their entire business from accommodations towards experiences, and those two virtual experiences, and they started shipping features and products a lot more faster on these sites. They also tried exploring lending business, because they know people who are earning full time from accommodation, they need let's say operational money to run their day-to-day operations. And if they can get them to let's say borrow from them, they can have a really long-term buy-in. They scaled up their operations side, insurance side of things. So I think they really pivoted themselves away from accommodations for at least a year, and then they still focused on, let's say, the host side of the business, that they need supply when the travel comes back again, because people would want to be at the place where most of the supply is. And I think the businesses in accommodations domain who did not identify this trend, or who did not identify there is a lot more opportunity in experiences side of it, surely went out of business.
Well, great. I want to make sure we leave some time for questions from the audience. I did see one in the chat that I'll start with, but if there are other topics you would like us to talk about, please feel free to add them to the chat channel. The question I saw, I know we talked a bit about voice of customer programs, but this one was a little more concrete. They were looking for what tools or processes you're using for in-app feedback specifically. I don't know if any of you are doing that right now, like short surveys or anything like that, that are part of the actual baked-in experience of the UI. Are any of you doing that, or do you want to speak to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, of course, we try to use Typeform as much as we can ourselves.
Yeah.
Not feeding exercise overall. I guess for voice of the customer, right, we need to understand like it's a big program overall, which you can like tackle like bits by bits, but you can measure like while people use the feature or like are in a certain phase of your product. Like in product feedback could be NPS, or you can also have like customer first score, customer satisfaction score. You can also like trigger them via email ex post, right? I think it's always finding what's the right time without destroying the experience. Maybe like you want to rate a specific feature, but actually the customer needs to do more right after they use that feature. So you don't want to target them at that time, because maybe they will be happy about the usage, but actually they will like actually maybe churn right after, because you prevent them from reaching the action. Overall, I think like a good voice of the customer program is not only what you can measure within the app, but also like after we talk about NPS, but have like subsequent questions overall. So like it's more about like trying to understand all the sources you can leverage and how to connect them, right? So there is what experience they perceived, which is more like CSAT, customer experience score, or NPS. What did they talk about, which is more like Trustpilot, G2, Capterra, this kind of like sources overall. Or what they tell you through surveys, which are like less, like I would say, in between quantitative and qualitative. And then there is what experience we deliver, right? So maybe people were not happy, but because just like the app was very slow. So like, can you measure this part of the experience? Like, what did you really deliver to the customers? Because that's also like the third data point. And once you have all of that, which is a big win overall, then like if you connect everything, it gives you a holistic view of what people say, what did they really experience, and trying to understand from that what is the top priority in terms of improvements, or what you need to double down on, right? When people are happy about something, you can understand how to do more with it.
I think one source of customer, I would say, feedback that a lot of firms we don't focus a lot on is App Store reviews or Play Store reviews. That I think those are very useful at times, even if we go through that once. I think that helps a lot in identifying new issues. So that is also one very important source of VOC, which I don't see a lot of firms using, but that is one. And previously I've used a VOC kind of a program that for testing a specific feature when we rolled out. because we thought that the feature might not be the best user experience. So we triggered a survey after the user used the experience on the app. So I think that was pretty interesting. That kind of saved us from a little bit of usability testing for certain projects where we could. So I think that's one interesting usage that we've done. But yes, I think that requires a little bit of effort on our end to build that kind of a product, when that triggers when you've used that particular product and cohorting and stuff like that. So it does get a little bit complicated from that side.
Great. Another question I saw come through earlier when we were talking about OKRs was, what happens when you get into a situation where you have, I describe it as warring OKRs, where different groups have their own OKRs, and how do you work as like being a good partner to say technology and product have different OKRs? I think that's problematic personally to begin with, but I've seen it in the wild. Has anyone been in that situation or had to kind of like navigate their way through that? Any advice you'd give to someone who's in that situation now?
I can go in on this. So I think, in my experience, I've seen two sides to it. The first is where organizations have tried to set boundaries on this one. That okay, 70% of the time will go in product OKRs, 20% will solve tech debts, and 10% bugs and fixes. Or I mean, I'm just making up the numbers on this one, but the point being setting the boundaries. I think, in my personal opinion, that doesn't work really well because then you're working bandwidth backwards rather than problem backwards. Now there could be a problem which requires everyone to focus on how to fix that problem and or building a foundation for something bigger. Product will say, okay, this is the tech foundation, so let's pick up tech bandwidth, and that this 20% should come from the tech quota. And then tech will say, oh no, I have to fix tech debt in this, and then there will be a disagreement. What I have found helpful is again going back to framework, that have a guiding principle, have let's say bare minimum thing to fall back upon, which or maybe jobs to be done as well, which you can leverage at the time when you have to make that trade-off. If there is a tech debt that is blocking you from blocking a user from completing that job, or it is not bringing that desired experience to the user, then maybe that becomes a priority, and you have to solve that tech debt, set up the foundation for a bigger success in future. If that's not the case, if you're living with that tech today, you'll be able to survive it with it, maybe this entire quarter. So have a user problem backward view rather than a bandwidth backward view, because only then you will be able to come up with the optimal allocation of bandwidth rather than just trying to justify, oh hey, I spent 20% of my time this quarter on solving tech debt, which serves no purpose, right? So I think in the discussion we also touched upon output versus outcome, and this is the perfect example of that you have to drive outcomes and not the output.
Got it.
I think also because we talked about engineering product here, is with other stakeholders, right? It's like using KPI trees, right? I mean, the company has a main metric, a North Star metric. You decompose it into sub KPIs, and you do the exercise over and over again, right? And this is for the organization, right? Not only product engineering; it's for everybody in the company, and everybody will every entity or organization within the organization will have a North Star metric of their own that builds to this tree. But there are some metrics that will be shared, right, at some point in the tree. And that's how you align, right? If you're like two nodes and you work on these two nodes and they build up to the same metric, that's force alignment, right? You want to reach a certain objective that is common. And that's, I think, how you can align like OKRs at the company level overall and make sure people shoot in the same direction. And also that allows people to identify very early on like a conflict of interest or like misalignment overall. And again, by the play of like, well, A plus B equals C, overall, like you are going to prioritize what drives the bigger impact for the both team combined overall, and force you to align for the better good. overall. So that's, I think, a usual approach that you can take to make sure that like OKRs are not only something for product or something different for other teams, but something at the company level, right? And looking holistically at like what are the contributors to this metric, and make sure that like everybody is aware that it's not just like your game or their game, it's your game together.
I completely agree. I think it's all taking the time up front to align across your engineering and design and business partners. It might seem like a little bit more time up front to align everyone on what outcomes we're driving, but it will just allow you to move at such a faster velocity after the fact and empower, all of those teams to actually work more autonomously, but toward the same goal. And so I think kind of really aligning toward those outcomes allows you to just deliver at much a faster pace and probably come up with more creative solutions as you move along.
Steph froze slightly.
It looks like Steph might have frozen there. I can see we've got one more question coming in the chat here.
Hi guys, sorry, my computer's lagging a little bit. Sorry.
No worries, Steph. I'll just let you.
Sorry, yeah, I lagged. Did you want to wrap us up?
Yeah. I was just going to ask the final question I've just seen come through on the chat, which says, have you got any advice on introducing the use of customer insights or continuous discovery in an organization where they're not really used currently?
Just go for it. Just go for it at your own level. Like if you can try to talk to the customer and show how it delivers value for your own part of the product, and then talk to your manager or the other teams and show them how thanks to that you got more successful, and show a track record that help convince people that it's a good thing to do, right? I think that would be the best advice.
I think one easy way to align on sticky issues like this is just try to take up one very small project and try to deliver some impact. Once there is an impact that can be seen from what these user insights can bring in, it's easier to align people in general. I think nobody can compete with metrics. They win at the end of the day. So, I mean, that's the way to go about such issues or such blockers, I would say.
I think if you are hit by budget constraints, there are enough free tools to go into. I recall in one of my companies, we did not have any budget to incorporate any of these kind of tools. And there was a startup which has just launched some product, and they are more than happy to extend a trial to you with all those features, because they also want early feedback. And they had a very interesting feature where you can actually see what real users are doing. So they used to churn out recordings. Hotjar later integrated that as well. So I just went ahead, negotiated with them for a, let's say, 6-month trial period, and asked my developer to embed the script on our website. And the moment those recordings start flowing in, everyone was excited about it, and every other team and other pillars also wanted to have this across. And that's how you can drive this across companies. So MVP approach, how you apply that to any product. So go with a free version, see if you can drive alignment.
Nice. And Alexandra, anything to add on the end there?
I can't say anything more than what they've already said. I think they have all the really important parts. I think it's just start small. It doesn't have to be a massive effort that you have to get a ton of buy-in in. It can be one customer interview this month. It can be something small that you can gain, that buy-in as you move forward and deliver the results. And to Ritika's point, no one can argue with data. So as you get more and more of that information, it will just only help your case. But start small.
Nice. And just to kind of finish us off, does anyone have any kind of closing advice for the panel that they want to leave our attendees with?
Don't be afraid to build a strategy. Just, go for it. Put something on paper that allows you to just guide your next action, and then you will revisit it progressively. Like it can be like the white page, like blockage is massive for many people, and in the end you just know the next steps. And if it's like a strategy for the next 3 weeks, it's the strategy for the next 3 weeks, right? That's it. Gets you started, and then like gets you the rhythm. And in the end, it's a muscle, but you need to practice. So don't be afraid to just start.
Anyone else want to share any last thoughts?
I think the last thought that I'll leave people with, which I think was kind of a common theme of what a lot of people talked about today, is don't be afraid to pivot as your product strategy. As you get more information and you move along, it's great to have that, because that will really drive so many other things. But as you get more information, you learn more, you test more, you learn about your product market fit more, don't be afraid to adjust your strategy as you go along, or your roadmap as well.
I think last closing thoughts on my side, just focus a lot of energy on the problem statement and not be married to the solution. I think solutions will keep on changing, but if you know the problem that you're trying to solve, I think that really goes a long way in ensuring that everybody is aligned. So focus a lot and spend a lot of time in figuring out what that problem statement is and what the right metric for that is. If you can measure it right, I think it's very difficult to compete with, as I said, numbers earlier. So, and always try to, if there are some thorny issues like that, try to start small and try to then buy in resources for that once you prove the impact. It's difficult not to align people then.
Great, thank you. Mohit, anything to add on the end there?
Nothing much. I think all the relevant points have been spoken. I just one thought from my side: be bold, but be realistic with strategy as well. Don't be afraid to go bold. I've seen startups grow. Where people were really courageous enough to take bold strategies forward. But be realistic with how much you can invest as well. If not, if it does not get executed today, it does not mean it's a bad strategy. It means maybe there are constraints which are holding you back, but at some point it will start making sense to everyone, and they'll start investing in that.
Great. And Steph, you're back with us. Is there anything you want to kind of wrap up with?
No, other than I think this was a great panel. I really enjoyed hearing the input from you all. It's interesting to listen to coming from a startup perspective, because we're building towards a lot of this as opposed to having very robust programs so far. But thank you everyone for participating. This has been great.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Steph, for moderating the session. Thank you to all our panelists for a great discussion. And thanks to our attendees for tuning in and asking some great questions in the chat. If you want to carry on the conversation, feel free to jump over onto our Slack channel where you can connect with people and continue chatting there. But stay with us. We've got lots more sessions to come today. So looking forward to seeing you all later. And thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.